The wind howled through the desolate mountains of Colorado, carrying with it the sting of snow and the echoes of a world long forgotten by time. High above the dying mining town of Cedar Flats, a man named Rowan McBride lived in silence so deep it could drive a weaker soul mad. His cabin, built of weathered logs and grief, stood against the cold like a stubborn ghost, refusing to fade. Rowan had once been a man of laughter, a husband, and a father. But when the fever took his little girl Lucy and left him with nothing but ashes of memory, he turned his back on the world. For years he spoke to no one, trusted no one, and convinced himself that love was nothing but a trap set by fate to break men's hearts. Every morning he'd trek down the winding trail to Cedar Flats, trading pelts for coffee, flour, or bullets, speaking in short nods and grunts before retreating back to solitude. The townsfolk called him the Mountain Man, half in fear and half in pity, not realizing that he carried the weight of a ghost on his shoulders. But fate, like the winter wind, doesn't respect walls. It seeps through cracks and finds even the coldest hearts. It happened on one of those bitter mornings when the frost was so thick it turned the air to glass. Rowan had come into town early, his rifle slung across his back, his breath fogging in the pale dawn light. As he passed the blacksmith's shop, he noticed movement near the wooden trough. Two small figures stood there, barefoot in the snow, their thin dresses hanging in tatters. For a moment, he thought they were mirages, hallucinations of the lonely. But then he saw the steam rising from their breath, saw their small hands cupped before them, palms up, begging without a sound. They were twins, identical, fragile, and haunting. Their dark hair tangled with frost, their cheeks hollow, eyes too old for their years. The town bustled around them with deliberate blindness. Men who'd dig silver from the earth but couldn't spare a crust of bread turned away. Women clutching their shawls crossed the street as though kindness was contagious. Rowan watched it all, his heart tightening like a vice. The girls didn't speak, didn't plead. They simply waited, patient, silent, enduring. When a passerby tossed a crust of bread into the snow, one of the girls picked it up, brushed off the dirt, and broke it evenly in half. No hesitation, no greed. She handed one piece to her sister, their eyes meeting with wordless understanding. That simple act shattered something inside Rowan. It was the same way Lucy used to share her candy before she fell sick. The memory hit him like a storm. For the rest of the day, he couldn't shake the image of the twins, so small, so still, yet so full of a strange kind of strength. That night, the wind screamed against his cabin, but Rowan couldn't sleep. The crackle of the fire seemed to whisper questions he couldn't answer. Who were those children? Where did they come from? Why did no one care? He tried to tell himself it wasn't his concern. He'd built his solitude to be unbreakable, a fortress against compassion. But the more he tried to push the image away, the clearer it became. Their hollow eyes, their trembling hands, the quiet dignity in their silence. When dawn came, Rowan was already awake, boots laced, rifle ready. This time he filled his pack with food, bread, dried venison, honey, and apples from the last harvest. He told himself it was just one act of decency, nothing more. Just a man doing what any decent human should. But deep down, he knew better. Deep down, he felt the stirring of something dangerous, the faint, forgotten pulse of a heart that still cared. When he reached town, the twins were there again, standing in the same spot as if waiting for him. He approached slowly, careful not to startle them. They watched him like wild creatures, curious, alert, ready to run. He knelt a few feet away, placed a loaf of bread on the ground, and stepped back. "For you," he said softly, his voice rusty from disuse. For a long moment neither moved. Then one of the girls, the slightly taller one, edged forward, eyes never leaving his. She grabbed the bread and retreated. Instead of eating, she broke it in half and handed it to her sister. Rowan nodded once, then turned and walked away, pretending not to notice that they were watching him until he disappeared around the corner. That night he dreamed of Lucy for the first time in years. She was standing in the snow, her tiny hands outstretched, whispering, "Papa, help them." He woke with tears on his face and a decision in his heart. The next morning, Rowan followed the twins. He kept his distance, tracking them through the edge of town and into the wilderness beyond. They moved with surprising skill, silent, sure-footed, leaving barely a trace. They crossed frozen creeks and disappeared into the ruins of an old homestead miles from town. There, hidden among the trees, Rowan found the truth that would haunt him forever. The girls weren't just poor, they were alone. Inside the ruined cabin, beneath a collapsed roof, they had built a tiny world out of scraps. Blankets made from flour sacks, a fire pit lined with stones, and in the corner, 2 small beds of pine needles and hay. On a crude wooden shelf sat a doll, handmade from corn husks and tied with string. It was old, worn, but lovingly cared for. Beside it lay a small cross carved from driftwood. Rowan's throat tightened as realization struck. These girls weren't just surviving, they were mourning. They'd been living there alone since their parents died in a fire months ago. No one had helped. No one even looked for them. He sank to his knees in the snow, the weight of their suffering crashing over him like an avalanche. All the walls he'd built, all the years he'd spent convincing himself that caring only led to pain. It all crumbled in that moment. He saw Lucy's face in theirs, her laughter echoing faintly in the wind. When one of the twins appeared in the doorway, clutching the corn-husk doll, she didn't run this time. She simply looked at him, eyes full of questions and fear. Rowan took off his gloves, his hands trembling as he reached into his pack and offered them food. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he whispered. The girl hesitated, then took the bread. Her sister stepped out beside her, clutching her hand tightly. For the first time, Rowan saw them both smile, small, uncertain but real. The mountain man, who had buried his heart in silence, finally found his purpose again. That night, the fire in his cabin burned brighter than it had in years. 2 small figures slept on the rug beside it, wrapped in blankets, their soft breathing filling the space that had once been haunted by ghosts. Rowan sat awake long after they'd fallen asleep, staring into the flames. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whether the world would thank him or curse him for getting involved. But for the first time in a long while, he didn't care. Somewhere in the storm outside, he thought he heard Lucy's voice again, no longer crying, but laughing softly, as if to say, "You did the right thing, Papa."